G'day, Chris here and welcome back to ClickSpring. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, I expect it'll come as no surprise that I happen to be a morning person. I like the quiet that comes from getting up before anyone else in the house and making an early start on the day. It feels like being given some extra time, as if those first few hours before the proper workday begins offer something extra not available later in the day. I'm fortunate to have a window that gets the sunrise for some of the year. I love that each sunrise is different, how it lights the quiet house and catches on things in a way that makes them seem somehow less ordinary. Some objects, of course, are far from ordinary and in fact are made to receive light, to transform it and have their nature fully revealed by it. Perhaps none more so than freshly cut guilloché. This plate will eventually become the small insert disc that occupies the centre of the dial indicator project. And I've selected a classic guilloché pattern to fill that space, in keeping with the overall Art Deco theme of the project. It's about as simple a pattern as a straight line engine can produce. Just a straight line, periodically interrupted, and then repeatedly phased, to provide pleasing angles for the eye to follow and enjoy. Yet despite its simplicity, something remarkable happens when guilloché interacts with light. Much like a sunrise filling a room, the results seem to exceed the sum of the parts. The same can be said even of the process to form it, where it turns out that light is an essential tool for soundly cutting guilloché. Of course, this isn't something unique to guilloché. It's true for much of machining and many other activities too. Light is the universal tool, giving us information on temperature, history, surface and shape, an all-purpose free instrument guiding how we complete a task. Sterling silver is an excellent material for receiving guilloché. It's a soft, dull, rather unimpressive metal in its oxidised state. But scratch or abrade its surface ever so slightly, and a burst of colour hints at something quite special underneath. Its high reflectivity means that silver has the property of responding to light like few other metals. Sometimes it looks as if it's made of light itself. How it expresses that property depends largely on how we choose to cut it. And again, light informs a suitable structure for the cutter, revealing where the changes need to be made and which surfaces need to be improved. Polished facets beneath each cutting edge are essential to a good surface finish to the cut. But interestingly, stoning a small land, slightly contrary to ideal cutter geometry, provides an outsized effect on the result. It exploits yet another quality of sterling silver, that it responds well to burnishing. Now by design, the land doesn't provide for a perfect mirror surface. To my eye, a perfectly reflective surface is slightly too strong. Better that the surface have a very slight grain from, in this case, sapphire, and so gently diffuse the light, just short of a true mirror surface. I'll be cutting this pattern without using the guide adjacent to the cutter. Instead, I'm using the depth stop that I made in a previous video. So the work must be dead flat, and running true in the machine before starting work. To begin, a small test cut to the side of the workpiece in a place that will eventually be turned away allows the depth of cut to be set for the first feature, a small rectangular box. Again, reflected light provides the information for assessing how things are going. The underside of the chips should be bright and clean, with just a hint of the burnished grain that I mentioned previously. The cutter is made reflective for cutter performance, but it also serves to put mirror surfaces right into the action to give information on alignment and cut quality that would otherwise be much harder to see. Each of the straight lines is then back cut into the corners. The main pattern cut proceeds from the same starting point, starting with the depth of cut, taking care to use all of the available lighting and reflective surfaces to assess the performance of the cutter, the depth of cut and so on, before proceeding to cut the full pattern. This is quite a deep cut in Guilloché terms, just under 1/10 of a millimetre, so I'm taking 3 passes for each line of the pattern. The first is for the coarse bulk removal of stock. The second pass removes further material, but importantly sets up the surface for the best possible final cut. The ideal objective is for that final cut, as in most machining circumstances, to remove the minimum of material, with a well-controlled, consistent chip across the entire workpiece. The chips should tell a consistent story throughout the roughly 3 hours this pattern takes to complete. The underside of the chip should be bright and clean. The cutter must cut rather than tear without exception. And the evidence that this is so is the nature of the light reflected from both the cut and the underside of the chip. With a continuous chip-forming material like silver, the chips, with the odd exception for local interrupting features, should be formed as continuous unbroken ribbons. Ideally, each of the 3 types of chip formed for each line of the pattern will have the same character at the end of the work as those generated at the start. The visual effect of the microscopic grain of the cutting edge can now be seen. It prints upon the work like a stylus, creating a nanoscale surface structure within each cut that's systematically repeated across the workpiece. If you've ever wondered what the appeal of true hand-cut guilloché is, well, this image pretty much tells the story. The surface created by this process, particularly in a metal as responsive as silver, emits a rich, luminous glow that catches the light in a way that no stamped process can ever approach. Once cut, there's now a new mission, to guard against injury of the guilloché surface, as the various features of the component are formed. Similar principles apply to the lathe cutters for silver. The tool must be extremely sharp, and it again benefits from a stoned land to burnish the cut. This recess is for the subdial display of the indicator. In due course, it'll have a small insert placed within it, showing graduated intervals. In its brightest surface finish form like this might suit something like a jewellery item just prior to enamelling. But for an instrument dial, something a little more subdued is appropriate. So it's common for a surface treatment of some sort to be used to tone down the intensity of the guilloché and push it back visually in the mix of dial details. I've chosen to lightly lacquer this part in a warm tone, but it's worth noting that the reflective nature of the guilloché cut makes a major contribution to how the lacquer appears on the surface. The two combine to give a luxurious bright presentation of a warm, softly glowing dial when directly lit, yet at all times a passive background surface that serves the readability needs of the instrument dial. While inspecting the final result, and knowing all of the steps that have gone into it, it's clear that cutting guilloché is a decidedly human activity. The motion of the cutter through the workpiece is certainly constrained, but there's a lot more room for variation and error than might otherwise seem obvious. Machine flex, variations in cutter pressure, performance decay of the cutter, the mood of the operator, even walking away from the machine for a break, all will, for better or worse, visually register in the work. Once begun, this is an operation that's generally seen through to the end in one uninterrupted session, usually spanning several hours. So it's an endurance test, and essentially a single take live recorded performance, with the guilloché itself being a sort of analogue optical recording media. This recording is an up-to-the-moment capture of the operator's knowledge, experience and state of mind. And there's nowhere to hide with this sort of optical record. The light reveals it all. Even when the result is deemed acceptable, the guilloché will be the first to point out the deviations from the intended ideal. The slight change in light, recording a momentary lapse in pressure control, the odd undisciplined move of the cutter and so on. Nothing slips by without internal remark. Nothing escapes being recorded in the workpiece. Yet that human variability ensures uniqueness, so that no two pieces of cut guilloché can ever be the same. Now, of course, this observation is true of most of the things that we create to varying degrees, not just guilloché. But to me, guilloché is the most extreme version of it that I personally encounter. No other activity records me with quite the same detached honesty. And so for me, it's the clearest example I can think of to illustrate an interesting principle, that how and what we choose to make is an expression of our deepest selves. It's the definitive record of who we are at that moment of creation. This idea sits comfortably alongside the quote that I included at the start of this video. The longer passage of text that it concludes provides more context and is well worth a read. I'll put a link in the description below. I like that it can be interpreted in a number of ways. As written, the light is presented as a metaphor for human reason and rationality. The text implies that we're obliged to hold the ground of truth and reason, to calmly illuminate the world as it is, no matter the obstacles that we may encounter. It can also be read as direct instruction, a reminder to transmit kindness and knowledge to others, to do good things and recognise beauty, and to openly share all of it whenever the opportunity presents. I also take it as a gentle warning to myself that whatever it is that we love to create, every thought, word and thing, as we consciously bring something new into the world, we have a choice in how it will come to be and how it will affect those around us. So let it be that whatever we choose to create transmits light. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.